What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is February 12th, 2026, about 8:40 p.m. where I'm at right now, and we are continuing our 18th book in our Book to React series. This is episode 10 of Revolutionary Suicide, the memoir, the autobiography of the founder of the Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton. Last time we were reading this text, we were in one of my least favorite chapters from this type of book. You know, in almost every story of a revolutionary, particularly the Black Panthers or any other Black radical in that time, when they were going through persecution from the state, like they were being framed for a murder or, you know, chased by the police, being on the run, on the lam, there's always them going on and on and on about their prison stories, their courtroom war stories, and stuff like that. While I appreciate those sections of those books, like in Assado's autobiography, like in Angela Davis's autobiography, and like now in Huey P's autobiography, they are not my most, they are not my favorite parts. They're not the most engaging. They're not the most fun, to be frank. But we read them anyway, we get through it, and that's what we're doing today. We are reading Huey P. recounting his murder trial where he was charged or framed for murdering a police officer. And he's going through every single detail of the court case. We are finishing up this chapter. It's chapter 26. I suggest everybody go watch that up. We will complete all of chapter 26 right now. There's only about 15 or 14 more pages to go, and then we're going to call it a night. So it's going to be a short live stream. Without further ado, let's get into Revolutionary Suicide, chapter 26, starting here on page 234. Finally, on the morning of August 22nd, I took the witness stand. A number of people had doubted I would testify because they thought I would not be able to handle a merciless cross-examination by Jensen. But actually, I looked forward to it. For 6 weeks, I had sat beside Charles Gary in the courtroom and listened to Jensen claim that I had murdered Frey in cold blood. I had watched him try to sell the jury on the fact that I loved violence, that I had a history of provoking policemen, and that there was reason to believe I did not tell the truth. I wanted to set the record straight and prove to the jury that I was innocent. I was also determined to let him know what it meant to be a Black man in America and why it had been necessary to form an organization like the Black Panther Party. After that, I hoped they would understand why Frey had illegally stopped my car on the morning of October 28th. Gary opened up by asking me the all too important questions: whether I had killed Officer John Frey and whether I had shot and wounded Officer Herbert Haynes. I gave the only possible answers: the truth. No, I had not. After that, we went through the necessary background leading up to the incident, which in this case began the day I was born. I told the court about my family, about growing up in Oakland, where there was no place to play except in the rubble and garbage-strewn streets and vacant lots, because Black kids have no swimming pools, no parks, no playgrounds. I told them about degrading experiences in the public school system, experiences that countless thousands of other Black children have endured and continue to endure in an oppressive and indifferent world. I told them about how the Black community is occupied by police who need no excuse to harass and bully its inhabitants. I told them that when I graduated from Oakland Technical High School, I was unable to read or write, and that most of my classmates were in the same boat because no one in the school system cared whether we learned to read or write. Then I told how, under the influence of my brother, Melvin, I had taught myself to read by going again and again through Plato's Republic. I tried to explain how a deep impression Plato's allegory of the cave had made on me, and how the prisoners in that cave were a symbol of the Black man's predicament in this country. It was a seminal experience in my life, I explained, for it had started me thinking and reading and trying to find a way to liberate Black people. Then I told of meeting Bobby Seale at Oakland City College and how the Black Panther Party grew out of our talks. See, it's so interesting. Like if this is your first live stream turning in, listening to this text, that one paragraph sums up basically all of the chapters that we read before, which kind of makes me feel like we could have skipped a lot of things, but hey, we're here now. By the way, shout out to my guy Kamal in the chat. Salute to Kamal in the opposite live stream. I'm going to give a shout out to him. Salute to Kamal. and everybody else is going to tune in to this live stream, whether you watch it on the vertical one or the horizontal one, however you like it. I'm going to continue here. So, Gary led me through an exposition of what the Black Panther Party stood for, and an explication of his 10-point program. I repeat, his lawyer, Gary, during cross-examination, led Huey P. Newton through an exposition of what the Black Panther Party stood for and an explication of its 10-point program. Remember, he's fighting for his life, but he's still a political prisoner. And so he is using this platform of being in this high-profile murder case for a murder he did not commit to actually try to do propaganda. And this is merging propaganda of the deed with propaganda of the word. Continuing here. I recited the 10 points in the courtroom and explained them. Blacks, I said, are a colonized people used only for the benefit and profit of the power structure whenever it suits their purposes. After the Civil War, blacks were kicked off plantations and had nowhere to go. For nearly 100 years, they were either unemployed or used for the most menial tasks because industry preferred to use the labor of more acceptable immigrants, the Irish, the Italians, and the Jews. However, when World War II started, blacks were again employed in factories and by industry, because with the white male population off fighting, there was a labor shortage. But when that war ended, blacks were once again kicked off the plantation and left stranded with no place to go in an industrial society. Growing up in the late 40s, I was aware of it in Oakland, because major defense plants had been built there during the war, and a large black population was condemned to unemployment after the war. I quoted the second point in our program as a way of changing all this. We want full employment for our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or a guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessman will not give full employment, then the means of production should be taken from the businessmen and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living. Sometimes, while I was explaining Black history and the aims of the Black Panther Party to the court, I forgot that I was on trial for my life. The subjects were so real and important to me that I would get lost in what I was saying. There were moments when I even enjoyed myself, especially when I had a chance to score points against Judge Freeman and Jensen, the prosecutor. On one occasion, I saw an opportunity to show my contempt for the judge, and I took it. I was describing how some immigrant groups had been subjected to oppression and discrimination when they first arrived in this country, but that after they began to make economic gains, some of them had joined their oppressors, even when the oppressors continued to discriminate against the immigrants' own people. I used an example, Jews who joined the Elks Club. I used an example of Jews who joined the Elks Club. Okay, if you don't know what that is, the Elks Club is like an all-male, private, very waspy, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christian organization. Basically, it's the upper middle class version of the KKK. The upper middle class version of the KKK is the Elks Club. And so, yeah, back then they were very anti-Semitic. Before the whites and the Jews became like this, because of their shared love for, I don't know, exterminating Arabs, yeah, and by the way, not all Jewish people are Zionists, right? But yeah, before basically the American right and all the WASPs in America decided that they love Jewish people in whole because of their love for Israel by extension, back then they were very anti-Semitic, you know what I mean? The KKK was like out there terrorizing Jewish people as well as black people, you know what I mean? And the Elks were discriminating against Jews, no matter how wealthy, no matter how powerful, by not letting them join their private secret club. Anyway, so I used an example of Jews who joined the Elks Club, even though they know that this organization is racist and anti-Semitic. Judge Freeman had been the first Jew admitted to the Elks Club in Oakland, a fact that had been given a great deal of publicity. The Elks wanted it believed that they were no longer anti-Semitic, but everybody knew better. Another time, talking about contemporary racism in American society, I deliberately used the Mormon Church as one of the most blatant proponents of ethnic ethnic discrimination. Knowing that Jensen was a Mormon, I looked at him when I said this, instead of at the jury. He gave me a smirk, and I kept right on looking at him. He could say nothing in front of the jury, lest they learn the truth about him. Jensen often became impatient with the way Gary was conducting his examination of me and frequently interrupted. But even he sometimes seemed interested in what I was saying. Throughout, however, those meaningful glances passed between Jensen and Judge Friedman, the judge asking for an objection and Jensen giving it to him. Friedman could hardly hide his disapproval of everything I was saying and kept telling me to stick to the present and the incident itself. Then Gary would remind him that everything I said was relevant to the defense. Somehow we managed to get in all the most important political aspects of the case, and that was what mattered most. Only when that was accomplished did I turn to my version of what had happened that morning. I described it exactly as it took place up until Frey shot me. After that, of course, I had passed out, so I could describe only those things I remembered and my hazy impressions of them. I had spent nearly the entire day on the stand when Gary turned me over to the enemy. For the first time in 8 weeks, Jensen and I were face to face. My sister, Leola, had told me of an incident that occurred at the beginning of the trial when she was standing on the courthouse steps watching one of the many demonstrations. Jensen, not knowing who she was standing near her, watching with an associate. She heard Jensen tell his friend that he meant to make me lose my temper before the jury. Then he said all the demonstrations on my behalf would be meaningless. So when he approached me that afternoon, I knew what to expect. He wanted me to explode rather than engage in a good debating session. I felt that the whole exchange would be nothing more than another debate, only this time the stakes were high. I had spent too much time on corners, in bars, and in the classroom debating very complex subjects to get upset with Jensen's probing. He was a worthy opponent, but I knew that once he began to push me, he was going to be surprised at my responses. He had a false impression of me and expected me to respond in a way I was incapable of doing. Throughout almost 2 days of cross-examination, we struggled to see whose approach would prevail, mine or his, and I felt that during almost all of this time I controlled the situation. In responding to Jensen, just as I had responded to Gary, I did not pull any punches about criticizing the system or its agents. Though my life was at stake, I wanted to show my contempt. I sought to use their own apparatus to defy them, which was consistent with the revolutionary practices I have attempted to live by. So that paragraph is very important because Huey P. Newton is talking about going under cross-examination. And once again, if you've never been to court, or if you don't know anything about the American criminal justice system, essentially, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to testify on your own behalf to your innocence of the crime they are accusing you of. But you do have the right to go on the stand and say, hey, I didn't commit this crime. Let me try to explain myself. Here's how I got in this crazy situation, guys. And Huey is saying, like, this guy, the prosecutor, which every state, every city has their own prosecutor who will prosecute on behalf of the people, is testing Huey. He thinks that Huey is some angry black man who's going to get up and scream all power to the people with a big angry black fist in the prosecutor's face. And Huey P. Newton is saying, like, yo, I went to college. I was in the streets. I was on corners debating. This is what I do. Yeah, I'm good with the hands, but I'm also good with the mind. And I feel like that paragraph there talks about the danger he put himself in much more than him having to walk around chasing police with a shotgun and a law book in his hand. Facing the prosecutor is facing the state. And that is a person, I would argue, way more dangerous than police. This might be controversial, but your district attorney, your state attorney, the federal attorneys are much more dangerous than these racist ass, crack ass cops we got outside who murder everybody, not just black people, because they are the people that throw away niggas under the jail and throw away the key. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's all I got to say about that. And salute to Huey P. Newton for being brave enough and being intelligent enough to being able to take the stand in his own defense. Okay, shout out to Shaima Lixie up in the chat. Okay, yes. All right, so shout out to Shayma Lixie up in the chat. I appreciate Shayma Lixie showing love. Continue with the conversation in the chat. I will be responding to more comments in relation to Huey P. Newton's memoir, Revolutionary Suicide. Anyway, Jensen's entire cross-examination, nearly every incident he brought up was intended to demonstrate that I loved violence and guns and that I was a personal threat and a menace to police officers merely trying to do their duty. He began by asking about our early patrols in the Oakland community, emphasizing for the benefit of the jury in insidious ways the fact that we had carried shotguns. He tried to imply that I would have preferred to carry a concealed pistol on these patrols, but that the terms of my probation did not allow this. He reinforced this suggestion by having me read a poem, Guns, Baby Guns, I had once written for the Black Panther newspaper, which was filled with symbols and metaphors that have a particular meaning for Black people, but are utterly lost on most whites. In the poem, I had mentioned a P-38 revolver, and Jensen tried to suggest that this was the type of gun I had shot Frey with, and that my poem suggested I liked this gun and would use it if the occasion demanded. What is a P-38, he asked. It's an automatic pistol, I answered. Does it fire 9mm Luger cartridges, was his exact question. I explained to Jensen that I don't know much about handguns. I always preferred a shotgun and would never touch handguns while I was on probation. I explained to him that in this matter, as in all others, Black Panthers obey the law. At that, he asked me if I remembered an incident in Richmond in 1967 when I had not obeyed the law, when, as he put it, I got into a combat with Richmond police. He was referring to the time the police had lain in wait for us until 5 a.m. outside a house where we were partying. I had taken an arrest that time in order to avoid combat after one young police officer had stepped on all the brothers' feet and another got me in a chokehold against a police car. I carefully explained the details to Jensen and the jury and told how an all-white conservative jury at my trial in Richmond had believed the police version of what had taken place, as they always do, and sentenced me to 60 days on the county farm. I made sure the jury learned about the policeman's remark after viciously beating the brother. I have to go now because I promised to take my wife and kids to church at 9. Then Jensen brought up the time the Black Panthers had responded to the little boy who ran into headquarters asking for help. The police had burst into his house when his father was away and were tearing up the place on some phony pretext of looking for a shotgun. We asked the police to leave because they had no search warrant, and in their rage, they had arrested me for wearing a dagger in a holster, accusing me of displaying a weapon in a rude and threatening fashion. While describing this incident, I really got the best of Jensen. He had been on my right when he first asked the question, and the jury on my left. He wanted me to speak toward him, but I turned my back and began giving details of the incident to the jury, which took a while. Since he had asked the question about the incident, he could not interrupt my answer without looking stupid, so I seized the time and took the play away from him. The jury seemed fascinated with my description of the affair and was with me all the way. Jensen obviously got so disgusted with what was happening that he left his position near the clerk's desk and sat down looking very dejected, as I was later told. At any rate, I described the incident fully, leaned back and turned to my right for Jensen's next question. He was no longer there. I was surprised at not seeing him where he had last been standing. So I said, "Where is he?" Then I saw him seated at the table, and I smiled at him and said, "Oh, there you are. I thought you had gone home." Ha 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 ha. The courtroom broke up at this, laughing and laughing, and the judge admonished me. So this is interesting because, once again, Assata Shakur, Angela Davis, and everybody else that you read who knew Huey P. Newton and was a member of the Black Panthers said he was a horrible public speaker. But when he's in this courtroom recounting his life and everything he's been through that led up to this false conviction of murdering a police officer, he's got the whole room rolling in laughter. You know what I mean? While he's taking the stand in his own defense. Hilarious. So maybe when your back's against the wall, you end up becoming greater than what you ever were. Anyway, going to the comments. Nick Van Giel, 1025. Shout out to him up in the comment section. We are reading for Black History Month, Huey P. Newton's memoir, Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party. Let's continue here. So, Much of Jensen's cross-examination had continual reference to official reports and documents, which he kept consulting while I was on the stand. Reading a report that is filled in some record system and stamped with an official seal of approval can be very impressive. The printed page somehow suggests that whatever is described represents the truth, that it faithfully describes what took place. And so when Jensen brought up official police testimony of what had happened to me in the past, in arrests, in courts, in various trials, he thought he was offering the jury proof of my violent and crime-filled past. But far from distressing or embarrassing me, every one of his challenges presented a chance to tell the jury what had really taken place and to describe them in the larger context of what life is like for Black people in this country. In this way, I was able to demonstrate how the police had harassed the Black Panthers and looked for every opportunity they could to arrest us and destroy our organization. To give Jensen credit, he did not miss very much, but I countered every piece of official evidence with an explanation that went beyond words on the page. And I think the jury came to understand that no official document ever contains the whole truth. Events are dictated by a number of mitigating circumstances and a whole system of values and customs that can never be conveyed in print. Jensen made another mistake by examining some of my speeches and writings and into them exhortations to violence. On this tack, he quickly got out of his depth. He did not understand the way language is used among Blacks and often took literally what was meant symbolically. Every time he brought up something I had written or said that he thought sounded dangerous, I patiently explained what it meant in terms of organizing the Black community. In this way, I was able to describe to the jury the goals the party had for Black people. I had hoped to do this, to take the initiative from Jensen and develop certain political points in the courtroom. It was surprising how often I succeeded. Finally, Jensen got around to the morning of October 28th. He came meticulously prepared, armed with photographs and maps to present his version of what had happened. Leading me carefully through the whole incident, he had me describe my every move and gesture. At one point, I was even asked to demonstrate with him how Frey had smeared me. He also chose to bring up an encounter that Bobby Seale and I had had with two policemen in 1966 because he believed that event related to the shooting of Officer Frey. As Jensen described this incident, I had gotten into a fight with the policeman and had tried to take his gun away from him. If Jensen had been able to prove this, he could have used it as a foreshadowing of what had happened in 1967 and as evidence that I had done the same thing with Frey. I do not know where he got his information, but I pointed out to the court that it was on record that one of the policemen who was harassing us in 1966 had admitted in court that he was drunk when he met Bobby and me. Jensen said, "Mr. Newton, isn't it a fact that you entered a plea of guilty to battery upon the police officer, the man in uniform?" I answered, "I accepted the deal that the district attorney's department offered." "I see, and you pled guilty to a battery on a policeman. I think it was simple assault." Sarcastically, "Is that right? Mr. Newton, did you see anyone shoot John Frey?" "No." "Did you see anyone shoot Officer Haynes?" "No, I did not." "You have no explanation at all of how John Frey was killed?" "None whatsoever." "I have no further questions." With that, Jensen's cross-examination was completed. It had not gone according to his plan. I had never lost my cool. It was Jensen, in fact, who lost his. Salute to Huey P. Newton, because once again, this was a brave, brave man at 25 years old. You know, when I was younger, I used to be a big fan of Tupac Shakur. And Tupac Shakur was really my introduction to the Black Panthers because, you know, when I was watching all those Tupac documentaries and listening to his music, you know what I mean, and hearing other rappers talk about Pac, they always mention son of a Panther, son of a Panther. And that led me, you know what I'm saying, when I was about 10, 11, you know what I mean, to start looking up on the internet, you know, who are the Panthers? Who are they? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I thought Pac had lived a full life because Pac died at what, 25, 26, something like that in 1996. Huey P was going up against the state, not just with the shotguns, because we like to think about the Black Panthers with the guns. He was going up against cross-examination for days on end. Diddy didn't even take the stand. Diddy didn't even take the stand, and all he did was spray baby oil on a bitch and make an Asian woman say, "Diddy made me suck big pee-pee." Diddy made me suck big black pee-pee. That's all Diddy did. And he didn't even take the stand. Here is Huey P. Newton fighting for his life. He's facing the death penalty. At most, Diddy was going to face maybe a dime. Diddy was just going to have to do a 10 and sit down. You know what I mean? Pause. No Diddy. But shit. Anyway. So Ming Sung Bias is up in the chat. Shout out to Ming Sung Bias. We are reading Revolutionary Suicide. Revolutionary Suicide, the autobiography of Huey P. Newton, the founder of the Black Panther Party. Continuing here. So, my lawyer, says Huey P. Newton, whose name was Gary, was masterful in his closing arguments. A defense lawyer has to be good at that point because the prosecution gives the closing argument first and then has the last word after the defense has spoken. Gary reviewed the evidence, showing the holes and the discrepancies in the prosecution testimony. He had brought a number of large posters into court with Greer's conflicting testimony lined up side by side, and with the pointer, he painstakingly indicated all the contradictions in Greer's two sworn statements. The whole thrust of Gary's summing up was to illustrate how much of a reasonable doubt there was in the evidence presented by the prosecution. But Gary did more than this. In a moving and heartfelt closing speech, he addressed himself to the conscience of the jury and to their understanding of social conditions that had led to the death of Officer Frey. The black community, says the white man, who's the lawyer, Gary, the black community today, the black ghetto, is fighting for the right of survival. The white community is sitting smug and saying, let's have more police. Let's have more guns. Let's arm ourselves against the blacks. That is not the answer. If you think that is the answer, we are all destroyed. If you think that Mayor Daley has the answer, we are all destroyed. If you think that this nation, with all of its power and all of its strength, can eliminate violence on the street with more violence, they have another thought coming. Okay, this man sounds super radical. Okay? All right? So, shout out to Ming Sung Bias. Ming Sung Bias, she says, or he says, they have to do a summary. I don't know what school is making you read a summary of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. But if it is true, let me know what school that is, because I want to go there. I will transfer there tomorrow. I am studying and paying an arm and a leg to study at a university here in Budapest, Hungary. But if there's a school that's out there making you read Revolutionary Suicide, tell me the name, and I will leave Hungary tomorrow. I swear to God. Shout out to my guy, Kareth J. He says, interesting how you touch on something I have thought. If Newton were born in the neoliberal post-Reagan era, he'd probably be a rapper or an actor. Definitely a podcaster. Definitely, Huey P. Newton would be a podcaster. Hands down. Hands down. And it wouldn't even be a popular podcast. It'd be one of those, like, far left-wing Trotskyist podcasts that you find on YouTube. Like, I found one recently called Spartacist that has like 300 views per video, where every interview is like, today we're talking to our comrades in Brunei. We're talking to the members of the Brunei Labor Workers Party for the far left movement there, and the radical workers who are all here today, all 6 of them, yes, all 6 of them who are members of the far left radical Brunei Workers Liberation Party. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of podcast Huey P. Newton would be on. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm going to continue here. So, Huey P.'s lawyer continues in his closing arguments. He says, my clients and his party are not for destruction. They want to build. They want a better America for black people. They want the police out of their neighborhoods. They want them off their streets. Every one of you here possibly knows a policeman in your neighborhood. I know several men in police departments. I think they are wonderful people. I live in Daly City. I have a beautiful relationship with them. Those police live in my neighborhood. Within 3 or 4 blocks, I know where one of them lives. I can call on him if I need him. But no police officer lives in the ghetto. Why don't they live in the ghetto? Because a man that is making $8,000 or $9,000, $10,000 isn't going to live in the kind of hovel that the ghetto is. Okay. All right. Ming Sung Bias says his school is in the Dominican Republic. It's called The Redemption. It's an English school for English speakers. Interesting. Interesting. I was just talking to my wife yesterday that the Dominican Republic got baddies for both genders. Both genders got baddies in the Dominican Republic. So I cannot go there. So I cannot move to the Dominican Republic. I take everything back. I will not lose my wife to a nigga that says, que lo que, and me no black poppy, and then spins my wife around and does bachata on her ass. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I'm not going out like that. I will not lose Big Booty Acty to a nigga that is 3 shades darker than me, whose name is Domingo Sanchez. No, 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 no. I will not lose my wife that way. I refuse to go to the Dominican Republic. There are too many sexy motherfuckers out there to be in that bitch. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Your country is too sexy for me, Ming Sung Bias. I'm sorry. Your country is too sexy for me. I cannot go there. Okay? Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry to talk about all that. Continuing here. So, Huey P. Newton's lawyer says, has anybody thought of uplifting the ghetto so that it doesn't exist in the manner that it has? These are the things that Huey Newton and the Black Panthers and other people are trying to do. White America, listen. White America, listen. The answer is not to put Huey Newton in the gas chamber. It is not the answer to put Huey Newton and his organization into jail. The answer is to wipe out the ghetto, the conditions of the ghetto, so that black brothers and sisters can live with dignity, so that they can walk down the street with dignity. The fire and eloquence of Charles Gary's final arguments are difficult to describe. He was pleading for the principles and beliefs he feels most deeply about, and to which he has dedicated his entire life. When he stood and spoke out for justice and truth and tolerance, he was not simply defending a man whose life was in jeopardy. He was speaking for all the downtrodden and oppressed in the world, and he was asking the jury to think about them also. Few people in the courtroom that day were unaffected by what he said. In contrast, Jensen devoted most of his closing arguments to the particulars of the trial. He asked the jury to find me guilty of murdering John Frey and defended in detail the testimony of Greer and Haynes. Yet at a point in Jensen's summation in which he discussed the meaning of law and the process of justice, the words could very well have been spoken by Gary. It was what my lawyers and I have been fighting for. But I feel for Jensen and had no idea of the irony in his remarks. We put together in the courtroom the notion that every night that goes to every citizen, going back. We put together in the courtroom the notion that every right that goes to every citizen is implemented in our courts. I think that is so. And I think you should reflect on this. The notion that society accords a right to an individual has something that goes along with it, and that is that there is no such thing as a right without a duty that goes along with it. That is, if the law says a man has a right, the law also says that every other person must honor that right. He has a duty to honor that right. What is more fundamental, ladies and gentlemen, than the right to life? What is more fundamental than the right to a peaceful occupation in life? What we do in a courtroom is to seek out and declare a truth. We must, as I say, declare those truths in the courtroom. If we cannot declare those truths in the courtroom, we are lost. And in a courtroom, just as there must be a duty to implement a right, a courtroom must exist on the basis of the declaration of truth. With Jensen's final declaration that I was a murderer, the arguments were finished. The struggle between defense and prosecution was over, and the judge began to instruct the jury about how they must do, what they must do to reach a verdict. The function of the jury, said Judge Friedman, is to determine the issues of fact that are presented by the allegations of the indictment filed in this courtroom and the defendant's plea of not guilty. This duty you should perform uninfluenced by pity for a defendant or by passion or prejudice against him. You must not suffer yourselves to be biased against a defendant because of the fact that he had been arrested for these offenses, or because an indictment has been filed against him, or because he has been brought before this court to stand trial. None of these facts is evidence of his guilt, and you are not permitted to infer or speculate from any or all of them that he is more likely to be guilty than innocent. Okay? Giving a shout out to everybody. Okay. All right, so shout out to Ming Sung Bias. He says, do not come to the Dominican Republic. He says, the people are too sexy. He says, the people are too sexy. They will try to seduce you. Ming Sung Bias said the people in Dominican Republic will take you for everything you're worth. They'll take your dick and then take your money. Or in reverse order. Anyway, continuing here. So, as the jury filed out, led by David Harper, I felt everything was over for me. Some jurors had been impressed with my testimony and believed in me. I had watched them throughout the trial and felt they were sympathetic to the defense, but I had no hope of their steadfastness under the pressure of jury deliberations. Often in such circumstances, people will appear to lean one way, but change their minds when conflicting opinions bear down on them. So I went back to my cell prepared for a decision that would send me to the gas chamber. My work had prepared me well. Organizing defense groups in the community had continually made me aware that I could be killed at any time. And I knew that when serious actions begin to go down against you, you must be ready. If you wait to prepare for death when the gas chamber is facing you, it is too late. It is the difference between having your raft ready when high tide comes or trying to make it after the waves are there. When death is staring you in the face, the heavy things take over. The jury deliberated for 4 days. 4 days. I would be nervous as hell. Those days must be nerve-wracking. Nerve-wracking. The jury deliberated for 4 days, from September 5th until September 8th. And despite the fact that my lawyers were with me constantly, this time passed very slowly. Nonetheless, I was in good spirits. My thoughts kept me occupied. I re-examined everything that I had done before and during the trial and found nothing to regret, nothing I had to square myself with. Our activities as Black Panthers have been worth all the trouble and pain we had seen, and there was no reason to feel we were losing everything. If I had had a chance to start again, nothing would have been any different. I contemplated the gas chamber. Only 2 thoughts concerned me: how the last minute would be and how it would affect my family. First of all, I resolved to face it with dignity right to the end. Second, I worried about my family having to live through yet another ordeal. The whole experience had been terrible for them. Yet I knew that if necessary, I would do it again, even though it meant more suffering for them. I felt great love for them and valued their support. If I had caused them anguish, I was sustained by the knowledge that one day the people would have the victory, and that this would bring some measure of satisfaction to those I loved. Many people wondered what the Black Panthers would do when the verdict came down. The brothers had repeatedly said that the sky was the limit if the oppressor did not free me. At the time that was said, we meant that an unfavorable decision would be taken to the highest judicial level. But the statement was intentionally ambiguous and open to interpretation in order to put the whole Oakland power structure uptight. The plan certainly worked. An open interpretation not only attracted considerable publicity, but also left us free to make specific decisions about action after the verdict was in rather than before. So here he is saying, like, yo, the Black Panthers said, y'all give Huey a guilty verdict, they gonna burn this bitch down. That's what they're saying. They're saying, like, yo, we're gonna burn this country down. Y'all give Huey the chair. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Kamal is also in the comment section saying, do tell about that school. But Kamal, we found out that school is in the DR. And you know what the DR means? Directly robbed. Don't return. That's what DR stands for. It's not Dominicana Republica or República Dominicana. No. It stands for do not return. You will not return. You go to the DR. And the women gonna suck your soul out of you. You're gonna stay. Okay? No, we're not going to the DR. Continuing here. Okay. So it was early in the evening of September 5th, the first day of the jury's deliberations, that we were notified that the jury was returning to the courtroom. At first, we thought they had reached a verdict, but no. They wanted to have Greer's statement to McConnell read to them again, and they also asked if they could see my bullet wound. When everyone was assembled, I went over to the jury box, lifted up my sweater to show the scar in my abdomen, and then turned around to show the exit wound. Later, we found out that a disagreement had arisen among the jury members over the location of the wound. If Haynes's testimony were true, he testified that he was in a kneeling position and I was in a standing position. The wound near my navel would be lower than the exit wound in my back. But if Frey had stood and shot me while I was in a kneeling position, the navel wound would be higher than the rear exit wound. I had testified that Frey had shot me as I fell to my knees. My demonstration supported my testimony. So basically he's saying, like, his bullet wounds show that the cop stood over him with a gun in his face and tried to murder him. And if you look at the bullet wound, it looks like it's going down and out of his body, like somebody stood over him and tried to kill him. Those racist-ass police tried to murder Huey P. Newton. And then what did the police do? End up pretty much shooting themselves. Karma. God has to be black. This is how we know black Jesus is real. Black Jesus is real. He ain't been there all the time, but he's there when you need him. Ain't that the truth? Anyway, continuing here. In Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. So it was also during the jury's first day of deliberation that Gary found a mistake in Greer's testimony left uncorrected by Jensen. The jury had asked to see the transcript again, but when Gary discovered the error, he refused to allow the uncorrected copy to be sent in. Judge Friedman commented that he did not think the error made much difference, but Gary knew better. It was a vital correction as far as the defense was concerned, a mistake so serious that it could mean a new trial. Gary insisted that he and Jensen listen to the original tape, find out whether the word really was didn't, and send the correction in to the jury. Jensen at first claimed that his office did not have the proper machine to play the original tape. That evening, one of my lawyers listened to a dub of the original on his own machine and swore the word was didn't. Jensen did not listen to the tape until the next morning. It was a tense period for all of us, since the jury could have come in with a verdict at any moment. On Friday, September 5th, my attorneys played the original tape in the press room for reporters and representatives of the media. Most of them thought the word was didn't, and the news on television, radio, and in the press that day carried stories about this new discovery. Meanwhile, my attorneys went to an audio engineer who worked for a radio station in Oakland. He agreed to transfer the crucial part of Greer's testimony to another tape and then blow it up with his own hi-fi equipment so that they could hear the correct word distinctly. And once and for all, when this was done, the word Greer actually had said didn't came through loud and clear. This is why I'm saying this is not my favorite chapter in this book, because did we really need like 20 sentences about the word didn't? You know, I know he's writing this for posterity and to clear his name in the future, because, you know, people will always claim Huey P. Newton was a murderer, a cop killer. But that was just boring as hell. I'm sorry. That was just... Anyway, meanwhile, the defense was working frantically against time, preparing a motion to reopen the case and trying to get the proper equipment into court to play the blown-up tape for Judge Friedman and Jensen. It was a real hassle, but in the end, over the vigorous objections of Jensen, who claimed it was too late and that Gary should have done this during the trial, the judge did listen to the blown-up tape and had to recognize that the word was didn't. A corrected statement was sent in to the jury late Saturday afternoon, but Friedman would not allow any mention of the original error to accompany the transcript. We never learned whether the jury even noticed it, let alone understood how important and significant a correction it was. Finally, on the fourth day of deliberations, September 8th, around 10 o'clock in the evening, the jury reached a verdict. I came back into the courtroom with my lawyers to hear it read by the clerk. Drum roll, dramatic drum roll. Verdict of the jury. We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the above named defendant, Huey P. Newton, guilty of a felony, to wit, voluntary manslaughter, a violation of Section 192, Subdivision 1 of the Penal Code of the State of California, a lesser and included offense within the offense charged and the first count of the indictment. David P. Harper, foreman. The next verdict, with the title of the court and cause the same, we, the jury in the above entitled case, find the above named defendant, Huey P. Newton, not guilty of a felony, to wit, assault with a deadly weapon upon a police officer, a violation of Section 245B of the Penal Code of the State of California, as charged in the second count of the indictment. David B. Harper, foreman. The following verdict, with the title of court and cause the same. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find that the charge of previous convictions as set forth in the indictment is true. David B. Harper, foreman. Manslaughter, not murder. That was a surprise, but Gary and I were unhappy with such an equivocal decision. It meant that the jury believed I had killed Officer Frey, but only after severe provocation and in a state of passion. It was absurd, however, that they did not think I had also shot Officer Haynes. Did the jury think someone else had shot him? And if so, who? And how did the two shootings connect? The verdict was a compromise that showed no justice at all, for there was clearly a reasonable doubt about my guilt in the minds of some jurors, although they failed to bring about my exoneration. All these questions began to surface when I realized that although I would have to go to jail, I had escaped the gas chamber. Some people thought the verdict was better than a hung jury and a mistrial. The state could not try me again for first-degree murder, but I disagreed with them. The verdict caused a lot of dissatisfaction in the black community. Some people were particularly angry at David Harper, the jury foreman, who to them had sold us out in typical Uncle Tom fashion. I did not think so. To counteract this opinion, I sent out a message to the community shortly after I had a chance to analyze the verdict. This, in part, was my statement. The question has been asked, what do I think of the verdict of the jury? I think the verdict reflected the racism that exists here in America and that all black people are subjected to. Some specific things I would like to say about certain people on the jury. First, Brother Harper and other members of the jury who believed in my innocence owed an obligation to me and the black community to adhere to their convictions that I was not guilty. I am sure that they, the people of the jury who agreed with Brother Harper, a strong man and also jury foreman, were in the minority. I believe that Brother Harper was interested in doing the best thing for my welfare. I think that the verdict was a compromise verdict, a compromise between a first-degree murder and an acquittal or a not guilty. Why did Brother Harper compromise? He compromised because he truly believed that it was in my best interest. Mr. Harper made his decision based on the assumption that if a hung jury resulted, I would be tried in the next trial by an all-white jury and possibly convicted of first-degree murder. I believe that he based his action or his decision upon the fact that he saw how racist the majority of the jury was acting and their whole attitude toward the case. I believe that there were few people joining Brother Harper and his just conclusion that I was innocent and that I am innocent, but he didn't compromise. Because Harper failed to persuade the jury, or he felt that he could not persuade them or show them the truth or the fact that I was innocent, he thought that he would then give the lowest possible sentence. He might have considered that I have been in jail for the last 10 months and that I might be in jail for another 10 months awaiting a new trial, and then stand the possibility of having the first-degree conviction stand, simply because of the racism that exists here in America. These are all my speculations, and I will tell you why I speculate on these things later on while I have this conversation with you. It's like he's taking Brother Harper to black court. It's like brother, because Harper is the one black man who was on the jury of Huey P's, murder trial for this officer. And now Huey P is writing a letter to the black community who now has Harper on trial for the criminal offense, top-notch felony of being a prime Uncle Tom. When we need you to be a militant, you decided to Tom. And now the community is up in arms. And so Huey is playing his public defender in the court of public opinion. So let's continue here. Brother Harper, like many people, says Huey P. Newton, believes that on a manslaughter charge, you would spend maybe 2 years or 3 years at the most in the state penitentiary. And further, that due to the fact that I have already been in jail for 1 year, that while waiting trial another year as a result of a hung jury, I would already serve that time and even more. So therefore, because he couldn't get an acquittal, he then chose to compromise and get the lowest sentence. The only problem with that, though, is that in a political case, the defendant is subject to do the maximum length of time. The sentence on a manslaughter charge with a prior felony conviction is from 2 to 15 years. But I don't believe that Brother Harper had any idea of what he was doing. So therefore, I want to ask the black community sincerely and Brother Harper's son to forgive not only him, but also the other people who believed in my innocence and who were compromising because they did not know what they were doing. What's that Jay-Z line? Because Huey P is being hella shady. He's saying Brother Harper's son. He's like, I hope his son forgives him for wronging me. Like, that reminds me of that Jay-Z line. It's really fucked up that your sister is mad and your son got to grow up like, this is my dad? The label of a snitch is a lifetime scar. You'll always be in jail, nigga, just minus the bars. That's what Jay-Z said, bro. Like, cold ass line. You know it's really bad when your sister is mad and your son got to grow up like, this is my dad. The label of a snitch is a lifetime scar. You'll always be in jail, nigga, just minus the bars. Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry, I just had to drop some Jay quotes real quick. Anyway. So Huey says, I believe that they thought they were doing the best thing in my interest and the best thing in the interest of the black community under the racist circumstances wherein which they had to operate. Even though he was unknowingly operating against it, he felt that he was acting in the capacity of one who loves the community. Therefore, I am asking the community that in the event that he teaches at Oakland City College next semester, that he be given all respect due to a black man because he did not know what he was compromising to. I am very sure that we will get a new trial, not because of the kindness that the appellate courts will show us, but because the political pressure that we have applied to the establishment. And we will do this by organizing the community so that they can display their will. The will of the black people must be done. And I would like to compliment the people on the revolutionary fervor that they have shown thus far. They have been very beautiful, and they have exceeded in my expectations. Let us go on outdoing ourselves. A revolutionary man always transcends himself, or otherwise he is not a revolutionary man. So we always do what we ask of ourselves, or more than what we know we can do. At this time, I would like to admonish my revolutionary brothers and sisters to use restraint, that we would not show violent eruption at this time for the reason that the establishment would like to see violence occur in the community in order to have an excuse to send in 2,000 or 8,000 troops. The mayor has already stated that he would be very happy if something were to happen in the community while the establishment is in a favorable situation. They would like to wipe the community out. It is up to the vanguard party to protect the community and teach the community to protect itself. And therefore, at this time, we should admonish the community to use restraint and not to open ourselves for destruction. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Huey P. was a true leader at only 25 years old. 25. Huey continues and says, I cautioned restraint to the people because I knew the police were eager for a chance to kill black people indiscriminately. They had been waiting a long time for this day, and an angry eruption by the community would have given them the excuse they needed. The community responded to my request and stayed cool. Any spontaneous and unorganized outbursts would have caused great suffering. With everything quiet that night after the decision came down, the police felt cheated. They wanted some action. That meant killing blacks. Unable to find any provocation, two drunken colleagues of Frey created one. They drove in their police cars to our office on Grove Street and fired a shattering volley of bullets into the front window. Then they went to the corner, turned around, and came back, shooting into the office again. By this time, some citizens had called police headquarters, and the two policemen were apprehended. I don't want anybody to ever tell me the police in America are not a gang. Don't ever tell me that the police are here to protect us from violent thugs and criminals. The police in America are the violent thugs and criminals. All police are bad. There is no such thing as a good police officer, period. Period. They are evil. They are wicked. All cops are bastards. Piss on their graves. Piss on police officers' graves. Don't send them to the grave. Don't send them to the grave. Because their sons got to grow up like, this is my dad? The label of being a cop is a lifetime scar. You'll always be a pig, nigga, just minus the tar. I fucked up the bar, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, continue here. Anyway, fortunately for us, the office was empty, and no one in the streets of the buildings nearby was hit by the bullets. But if Black Panthers had been in the office, the police probably would have claimed that we had fired on them first and then tried to wipe us out. This time, however, they could not hide their treachery behind their usual lie. Justifiable homicide, the true nature of their crime, an unprovoked and unjustified attack on our office, had been exposed before the community. The two policemen were eventually dismissed from the force, but they were brought to trial for breaking the law. But they were never brought to trial for breaking the law. The police lost their jobs and got a job in another city, like LA. But the incident should also help make it clear to doubters that I was in fact innocent. Just as Frey's two colleagues felt free to go in search of black people to kill, so too did Frey in the early morning hours of October 28, 1967. There are many who do not believe that a police officer without provocation or danger would draw his service revolver and fire upon a citizen. But that morning, Frey had murder on his mind. Charles Gary summed it all up when he told the jury that the black community is in constant danger from the violence of the police. I wonder how many people are going to die before we recognize the brotherhood of man. I wonder how many more people are going to die before the police departments of our nation, the mayors of our nation, the leaders of our nation recognize that you can't have a society that is 66% white racist, ignoring the role of the black man, the brown man, the red man, and the yellow man. Officer Frey bothers me. His death bothers me, and the things that caused his death bother me. I can see this young man going through high school, varsity football, basketball, and all of the things that young men do in good physical condition, joining the police department, and without proper orientation, without proper attitudes, and without proper psychological training, and all the other training which is necessary to being a policeman. Being thrown into the ghetto. In a year's time, he becomes a rank and outright racist to such a point that when he comes to class to talk about his success as a police officer, the school teacher has to cringe and grimace to let him know that the use of the word nigger was not appropriate. When he was speaking to children, let it be known, let us never forget, the man that Huey P. Newton allegedly murdered was a cop who went to a school full of children and said, yeah, every day I gotta knock a few hard R's over the head. I gotta go out into the black community and knock a few of those N-words over the head with my baton. That's what this police officer that Huey P. Newton supposedly murdered did. Did he deserve it? Did he deserve it? Did he deserve it? I just wonder how many more Officer Freys there are. His death bothers me, but Huey P. Newton is not responsible for his death. Neither should any of us be for the death of any pig. We should not murder any pigs. We should not murder any pigs. Do not murder the pigs because they will eat their own. Trust me. Trust me. We're living in a time right now in America where the police are even killing young white men. You know, I'm in Budapest, Hungary right now. And this young Hungarian man who thought he was being funny and woke says, man, what's going on in America is crazy. True story. True story. He said, what's going on is crazy in America. They're even killing white people now. I swear to God. Wallahi, wallahi, wallahi. Somebody in Budapest, Hungary said this to me. Somebody in Budapest, Hungary said this to me. He thought he was being woke and funny. I found it a bit cringe because whenever white people say this type of shit to me, I always find that a bit annoying. I always find it a bit annoying when white people say, damn, they're killing white people now. Because it's like they're admitting that the status quo is that black people are supposed to die at the hands of police. But I digress. Either way, we just wrapped up episode 10 of Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. We will be reading chapter 27 in tomorrow's live stream. I'm going to try to go on live tomorrow, and we'll read all of chapter 27, which is only about 30 pages, so we will be completing all of it. Might take an hour or an hour and a half, and that will be all of part 5. And then we're back to sort of regular schedule with each chapter being about 10 or 20 pages. And then we will complete part 6, and then in about 3 more episodes, we only have 3 more episodes of Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide, and then we're done. So yeah, just letting you know if you wanted to know the schedule for us. So we might complete it this weekend. Because Friday, we're going to read chapter 27. Saturday, we can read 3 chapters of part 6, right? Which is 30 pages. And then on Sunday, we can read the last final 30 pages. Maybe there might be a 4th episode for the epilogue, but I don't know how long the epilogue is. I'll have to check on that. But yeah, that's the schedule for Revolutionary Suicide. Hopefully you find this engaging. Let me know what you think of this text. Simon Hill keeps it trill. Log it out. Y'all be easy out there. All power to the people and peace.